Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Hey y'all, happy Sunday. How's everybody doing? Looks like we got another full house today. Oh boy, lots of stuff going on here, lots of stuff going on behind the scenes, more than I care to admit. There is nothing on the machine today, with the exception of a piece of scrap. If you're really sharp-eyed, you'll see a piece of scrap right there. I surfaced the Pirate today. It turned out nice. No preview pictures. You'll have to wait till next Sunday is when that video will go live, and then we'll do a big whole to do about that. But the Pirate is finally on its way to done. I surfaced it today. Now I get to spend the rest of the week editing video, sanding, and finishing. And then it'll be ready for next Sunday. So, I believe it was Michael. Yes, Michael Mazalik, the 3D guru. There's a link to his channel down in the description of this video. If you want to learn more than you ever wanted to know about 3D modeling, he is my Obi-Wan. So it's Michael Mazalik. Now that the Pirate's finished, what's the next project? I've got about 15 different projects in the mix. I don't know what's going to be next. We'll all just have to wait and see, but more on that a little bit later on. So, if your laptop is telling you live in 14 minutes, no, that is not correct. Refresh. I should be live. Um, Maybe somebody would like to put that in the chat here. I'm live now. Refresh. There we go. Oh man. Well, let's see. There. Oh man, what a day! Yeah. And a big thank you to let me stop, back up, calm down. I got so many things going on. Let me give a shout out to Steve Nealon at Harneal Media. He's the sponsor of Mark Lindsay CNC com, my website. There was somebody earlier asking about the website. Make sure you're spelling my name right. Um, I know it's confusing if you don't put the D in it or something like that. It'll, Lord knows where you're going to go. Okay. I am not responsible for anything else you may see if you spell my name wrong. Okay. um, but he is the sponsor of my website, Steve Nealon. He is the man. If look, we're all makers here. We're all CNC folks. If you're thinking about putting together a web presence and putting together a web store, a web shop, something like that to sell your items instead of paying the commission to those other unnamed websites. Um, there is no better way to legitimize your business, develop a web presence, and create a strong, legitimate web presence than having your own website. And I would um, encourage you all to talk to Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media. It's not some nameless, faceless person in a call center. It's Steve, 100%. And Steve, if you'd like to put a link to um, your website, Harneal Media, there in the chat, I would appreciate it. But there is also a link down in the description box of all my videos to Harneal Media. He will treat you right. It's 100% personalized service. So let's see here. Let's get into some of the questions here about some of the things that I've been doing and some of them that I'm not been doing. Let's get to GR Greg says, how deep I went into the material in your resin pirate. Okay. For the test piece, I did it wrong. And I went 0.12 deep for the first pour. On the final project, I went 0.15 inches. Let me look that up real quick and see what that is in metric. 0.15 inches in millimeters. It's about not quite 4 millimeters deep on the first color, which in my case was clear. And then after that, everything else was an eighth of an inch deep, 0.125, which is just a little over 3 millimeters deep. So that first pour of clear resin was 0.15 or just shy of 4 millimeters deep. So that was the name of that tune, and that worked out real well. Okay, let's see here. And again, that video will go live next week. Let's see. Be Grateful wants to know, tried a website and could not pull it up. Again, Steve put a link to my website in the chat. Just make sure it's spelled right. Do I offer one-on-one training? I'm afraid I can't. I'm in a position now where I've got so much going on in the background. I just simply do not have the time to dedicate to doing one-on-one. And I think I would be trying to do a disservice to you if I even attempted to do one-on-one training. And again, folks, I am not a CNC expert. There are people in the chat right now and millions of people worldwide who can run circles around me on a CNC router. This Avid CNC that I have now is the biggest, most deluxe piece of equipment I have ever worked with in my life, and it is awesome. But I know this equipment, and that's about it. I'm a home hobbyist. I am not a professional by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I just try to show folks what I have done and share my experience, be that good or bad. And I know where to look for answers. And so if you ask me a question and I don't have an answer, I will go find it. So, I mean, that's about all I do here. And my overall mission here is to show folks who have never done this before that this is not over your head. And believe me when I say there is nothing special about me. If I can do this, then anybody can. Because 7 years ago, I couldn't even spell CNC. I'd never been in the same building with one. So if I can do this, anybody can. Just remember, it's just like anything else. It's like learning to drive. It's like learning to speak a second language. It's like learning how to play a musical instrument. There is no replacement for experience. And the only way to get that experience is to do it. And do it over and over and over again until you feel comfortable and confident in it. And my thing here is to show you that you can do this. It's not over your head. You can do it. So let's see here. Let's see here. Larry Stoss wants to know, is there any reason for the spoil board to be any larger than the cutting capability? I can't think of one. I can only think of problems that can arise from that. If you look at my spoil board, the way the Avid CNC is designed, you really can't make a spoil board wider than its cutting capacity, but you can sure make it longer than its cutting capacity. The problem with that is not so much when you build it. The problem is after you surface it. When you, depending upon the size of the bit you use, obviously, when you surface it and remove some material, if your spoil board is longer or wider, you're going to have that step down where the surfacing bit was able to clear the material and leave you a nice flat surface. Well, you're going to have a step around there. And if you go to tile something or cut something in a piece of material, and all or even just one part of it is up on that step, it's going to throw the plane of that material off a little bit, even if it's only 10 or 20 thousandths. And that's where you run into problems like something V carving deeper on one side than it does on the other, because the machine thinks it's a level surface that it's carving. But if you've got that little ridge or that little edge, it can throw it off. Um, Now, I know some folks have talked about tiling, and I haven't done anything on tiling yet, and that's one of the things that I will do soon. Um, if if you're tiling a project and let's say you have to push it through the Y, like on mine, um, and you get part of it cut, then you have to push that material backwards through the Y. You're going to have to lift it up over that edge, and that's going to cock that plane off of flat. It's no longer going to be flat. Now I see Dwayne Ruthig is saying here, I use that step to indicate where to set my workpiece. That's what I use those dowels for. If I could quit moving into position, um, that's where that goes. And he then follows it up with, if tiling, I simply put a spacer under the work. And if that works for you, great. I'm just pointing out some of the things to watch out for should you decide to do that, you know. And your solution of putting a spacer under the work, that works just fine. If you've got a spacer that you can do that with, just know that that's one of the pitfalls if you choose to do so. So, yeah, you can make it work. There's no doubt. So, um, that's just something that because I almost did that. And in fact, my spoil board is a 1/4 inch narrower and a 1/4 of an inch shorter than my capacity. And if I need more than that, I mean, it'll cut 50 inches wide. If I need more than that, I need a bigger machine. So, so let's see here. Okay. Ayal Peleg wants to know, how thick is the MDF spoil board you're using? This was 3/4 inch MDF. So that is what? 3/4 inch is 19 millimeter. And that's just what I bought. What spacing did I do between the T tracks? My spacing is uneven. It's staggered. And when I do some more fixturing videos, I will explain why. But I started out here on the ends, the first 3 here and here. The first 3 are 3.5 inches wide, which would be um, 89 millimeters wide. And then I went narrower as I got closer to the center. I believe I went to 2.5 inches wide, and then the middle piece is real thin. It's just whatever that ended up being, but don't quote me on those measurements. I did them that way so that when I make a fixture to go in a specific place on the T track, it will only go in that place. Now, I can't get it off by 1 or 2 T tracks wrong. It has to go in a specific spot to make it and believe me, I need things as idiot proof as I can get them. And that's one of those. I guess it's kind of a double check. So, So that's why I do it that way. It's just um, just to make sure that when I mount a fixture, I can only mount it in one place. So, and that way I can set up a G57, G58, whatever in Mach 4. And every time I use that fixture, I can just go to work XY0 and it'll zip straight over to where I have the XY0 set for that fixture. So let's see here. Let's see. Brooks Martin has a question about oak. I love oak, but I hate the grain raising when finishing. Someone mentioned before removing from the CNC, spray it down with water, and run the finishing toolpath. Has anyone tried that? I have not. I've not tried that. But as far as the grain raising, when you start finishing, that right there is the main reason for using a sanding sealer. Be it a shellac-based sanding sealer like Zinsser Seal Coat or something like that, or a vinyl sanding sealer like something you would get from Sherwin-Williams or Benjamin Moore or somebody like that. Sanding sealer seals that grain, and then if it does raise the grain slightly and you sand off those little burrs before you start going with your top coat, you will not raise the grain anymore. And that's the whole purpose of the sanding sealer, is to seal that grain when you're finishing. Now, if you're talking about a water-based dye or a water-based stain or something like that, raising grain is just going to be it's just going to be an issue. But whenever I have used a water-based dye, like an aniline dye or something like that, what I've done is uh, finish sand it, ready for finishing, and then I'll hit it with the water-based dye and know that it's going to raise the grain. Then after that's dry and ready to go, it's usually overnight, I'll let it dry. I'll hit it with the sanding sealer, then go back and sand nice and smooth, and then start the top coat process. So now I know luthiers will purposely raise the grain before they do any kind of finish sanding. Well, let me take that back. They'll finish sand to like 220 grit and then take a wet sponge. You don't hose it down or soak it, but they'll take like a wet sponge or a wet cloth and wipe it over the grain, let it dry, then finish sand it again. And sometimes they'll do that 2 or 3 times. That's especially the case on a fretboard where you're sanding. Personally, I sand fretboards down to 2000 grit because I oil them. I don't use any lacquer or anything else over a fretboard. I just oil it, and I use lemon oil or another specialist product. I'll have to find a link to it. Let me write a note. It's called Guitar Honey, and it's a fretboard dressing. But I know some luthiers will sand down to 800 grit and call that good. I go to 2000 and then put on the dressing, whatever it may be, whether it be lemon oil or guitar honey or whatever. But it's a fretboard conditioner and finish. And fretboards have to be silky smooth. I mean, your fingertips are running over it. And the last thing you want is any kind of splintering or any roughness or any of that stuff. So, but just for oak, I go ahead and stain, do whatever I'm going to do to the oak. Then I apply a sanding sealer, sand that with 220, and then start the top coat process. Be that lacquer, shellac, what have you. So, let's see here. Let's find another one here. Be Grateful says, I want to create letter grooves with a 4.5 millimeter width for neon flex light installation. In VCarve, how do I get those widths with the font I'm using? Basically, what you will need to do is experiment a little bit with the font that you're using. You can try making the font, well, you'll have to scale the font larger to get that width. Something you could try, let me switch over here to Aspire. And we can do something goofy here. And of course, I work in Imperial, but it's the same thing for metric, okay? And I'll just type my name in here. And we'll close it. All right, well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to tap F9 to put it in the center of my workspace. Now, if I need this thin spot here to be 1/8 of an inch wide, I'm just going to have to scale it until it is 1/8 of an inch wide. Now, that may make these wider pieces wider than that 1/8 of an inch. Another thing to look at is on the angled pieces here, it's going to be a little bit difficult as far as figuring out exact measurements. I mean, I've got my measuring tool here and everything else, but I'm not going to be able to scale it a certain percentage, for instance, and get the exact same measurement from here to here as I have from here to here. That's just part of this font. But if I have to have that 1/8 of an inch, I'll hold down Shift and I'll scale it out here. Then I'll take my measuring tool, come in, say about right here, and then come back over here to this side. And I can see up here that I'm not even close. I'm going to have to scale that way up in order to get that correct measurement. So if I close that, select the text, go back into the text tool, it may be something as simple as turning on bold, or I may have to just choose another font. So, okay, I see where you say you're using a uniform font, if that makes sense. Yes, that makes perfect sense. So you don't have different measurements here, let's say on this leg of the M versus this leg of the M. That helps. But basically what you'll need to do is just scale the size until you get that proper measurement in there. And it may be something as simple as clicking on bold, which made that a little bit wider. And that may be enough to do the job. So let's uncheck that, close it. Now, I don't know if any of that made any sense, but it may just be choosing another font or scaling it to where the area in between is the measurement that you need. Now, and again, if that becomes too cumbersome, you may have to select another font. So, okay. Let's see here. Go back over here. And you're talking about that neon flex light. I want to try a project using that stuff. I've been looking at that since Peter Pasuelo did a project with it a few years back, and I think he called it E-Wire. And that stuff looks cool. And I do want to try a couple projects with it. So let's see here. Let's see. Leo Steger says, I found my problem of a few weeks ago. I did a vector validation and found about 7 areas where the vectors were not connected. The open area was about, oh, geez. Yeah. I don't remember the specific case, Leo, but let me throw something at you over here. Let me go back over to Aspire. Let's say I'll go ahead and select this, right click, convert to curves. Okay, so now I no longer have a text object. I have vectors, individual vectors. I'll go into node editing and I will, let's say, I'll cut the vector here and I'm just tapping C on my keyboard. Okay. Now I'll tap in again to come out of node editing, take this, and let's just move it up. Okay. Just for giggles. Now, if I come over here to join vectors, my join button is grayed out and I've got 2 open vectors I can't join. And it's mainly because of the tolerance. Okay. You can, now I've moved this way too much and I've got some funny angles in here that won't allow me to just join them. But if you look at your tolerance, a lot of times that, and because you can adjust that, you can add a 0, you can take out zeros, and that will tighten up or loosen up the tolerance of your join vectors. Now, this is a bad example because, as I say, I've got an angle here and it's not going to join these. It doesn't know what I want to do. Something else to look at is come down here, join, close the vectors with a straight line, and I click that, and you see it did create a straight line here, but it did not create a straight line there. Because again, it doesn't know if it wants me to extend this vector this direction or add another vector to bring it down here. So you have to kind of, but I think in your case, playing with the tolerance in the join vector tool would have helped out quite a bit. So now I'll Control Z to undo all of that. And there we go. Let me see, am I still? Yes, I'm still. Control Z. And yes, I'm back to having a text object again. Okay. So I hope that answered that. So Larry Brown wants to know, could he use a single line font and cut on the line with the bit of the desired width? Yes, you certainly could, but he was talking about V carving, so I'm assuming using a V bit. You still can use a single line font and go to a specific depth, but the question was more about the width. You would have to figure out the width that a V bit would cut at a specific depth to figure out if that's going to work. But yes, it certainly would work. So. Okay, let's see. Let's see here. Roger the Tinker. Mark, do you know how to square the gantry with Y and X in the homing? I'm kind of spoiled, Roger, in that the Avid CNC automatically squares when I home it. Basically, when I had the Gatton CNC that did not automatically square, what I would do is home it, knowing that my limit switch was over on this side. I would then take a machinist rule. I would home the machine and then take a measurement over on this side of where the front edge of that gantry was when I homed it, and then come over to this side and take a measurement. And if they were not the same measurement, I would then adjust this side to match this side. I don't know if that makes sense. Now, you can add another switch, but I want to say it was, boy, I don't remember who it was that did that. I would go into the Gatton CNC Facebook group and ask over there. I don't remember who it was over there that did that. They added switches on the front of both sides of their gantry so that when they homed the machine, it automatically squared. Mine does that in Mach 4, but that's built into the system. It auto squares when you home the machine. So I don't know if that'll help you at all. Let's see here. You're using proximity switches. I don't know what control software you're using, Roger, but you should be able to, if you have a proximity switch on the front of both sides of your gantry in Mach 3, you should be able to set up a macro to do that. Go over to the Mach support forum. Let's see, I'll Mach support. If you're not a member of the over at the Mach support forum, then by all means join and look over there, because I know there was some discussion about auto squaring in Mach 3. But I don't know what the end result of that discussion was, because as I said, here in Mach 4, it was set up to do that. It was already configured to do that. So I didn't have to get into the configuration and do it. And I never did it on Mach 3, but I know it is possible in Mach 3 to auto square the gantry. So, and I hope that helps. So let's see here. Let's go with John Thompson wants to know, does the box gadget cut inner and outward tabs on the same path as on the line or outside of the line? I don't know. I have never used the box gadget. In fact, I think the only gadget I have ever used has been the material rounding toolpath for the rotary axis, which I don't have on the Avid yet. So I really don't know. If anybody out there knows if an answer to John's question, I know John would appreciate it, but I would appreciate an answer as well. I really don't have an answer to that question, John. I'm sorry. I have never used it. So Michael Mazalik says the box gadget cuts on the line. Okay. Okay. Perfect. And okay, Richard Canton says outside, and Wood Technology says it great cuts on the line. You just need to sometimes adjust the tolerance. So okay. And Thomas Grimm says Winky's workshop today has a discussion of using proximity switches. I'm not familiar with Winky's workshop, so I may have to look into that. Let me write a note to myself. Okay. I got to remember these names. Workshop, not wood shop. So, Okay, Wade Custon says, add your switch in Mach 3 and no macro required. Mach realizes when you have two motors with one slaved. It's working on mine. Okay, beautiful. There's your point of contact, Roger. Talk with Wade. You're welcome, Wade. Okay, let's see here. John Lackey says, I forget how to turn a square corner into a rounded corner. Okay, that's fairly straightforward. That is by using the fillet tool right up here. Let me click over here. Okay, the fillet tool. So for instance, let's do a rectangle instead of playing around with the text. All right. So I've got my rectangle over here. Now I'll go into the fillet tool and I'll take the tool radius, the radius I want to create. And it doesn't have to match the radius of the bit depending upon whether you're going inside or outside, but it generally speaking does not have to match the radius of the bit. So if I want to do what's a fairly small rectangle, if I want to do a 1/2 inch radius, that is a 1 inch diameter. So let's go with a 1/2 inch radius, and I'll come over here inside the rectangle and go to that corner, and you see how that check mark appears in my cursor there. I don't know if you can see it or not. Let me go to another corner. Yeah, there we go. You can see that check mark appear underneath the cursor. That's telling me that it can apply that radius to this corner. Then I click it, and there it is. So now, obviously, I'm not getting a check mark here because this radius is too tight. This radius wouldn't work. I'll get a check mark here, but this corner is too small for me to get a 1/2 inch radius. It would come way out over here. So just know that. But that's basically how you add a fillet and round off. But remember, in the fillet tool, you're working with a radius, not your tool diameter. It's the radius you want that arc to be. So that's the simple way. Let's go back over here to live. Yeah, Todd says make that radius with sandpaper. Been there, done that. Got the t-shirt. It happens to all of us, John, and the older I get, the more likely it is to happen and the more frequent. See, because like just right now, I couldn't remember the word frequent. So let's see. Marie Wood has a question here. I'm making a bowl with a raised anchor in the middle. For the zero plane, would I select U or N? Okay, you're talking about the combine mode. Let's jump back over. I'm still in Aspire. And let's just go into the modeling tab. I don't think I'm going to a 3D view, and you're talking about adding a zero plane. So let's add it here. And if you look, the zero plane has, I guess you'd call it the N shape. The zero plane, when you're doing a bowl or a dish, is basically there to help you with the outside surface area, to help fill in any roughness, ragged edges that are left over by pixels that are perceived as being cut deeper. So you would leave it as so. You leave it as such because the zero plane should be at the surface of the material. Now, having said that, remember that when you use a zero plane, you are making the entire surface a part of the 3D model. You can regulate that or control that by applying a vector around the dish, around the bowl. So when you go to machine the bowl, you're not machining the entire surface. You cut to a limiting vector, but you're making your entire surface of your material a part of the 3D model. That's also why you want to make your work material as small as you can. Like, for instance, if you're putting a 3D model in the corner of a full sheet of plywood, you don't want your full sheet of plywood uh, represented in this model here. If it's going to be a 3-inch by 3-inch model on a full sheet of plywood, make your material, size it accordingly. And then just make sure you have it placed where you want it on the outside on the CNC. So I hope that made sense. So let's see here. Let's see here. Michael Mazalik says box gadget clarification. The gadget creates two vectors. The inner is the finished size of the box. The outer vector is the one to use for the tool path. That is cut on the vector. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Okay, okay. Um, let's see here. Bill Smith wants to know, is there a list of variables that are available in VCarve Pro? If you go into the help menu, I don't know if there's a list of variables. I really am not sure. So let's find out together. Let's go back over here. Go into the help menu. There is keyboard shortcuts. What's new? Release notes, third party user portal, troubleshoot. There is a list of keyboard shortcuts, and of course that's going to open up over here. So I got to drag it back over here. I don't know that there is a list of variables here. But there is a list of keyboard shortcuts. I don't know if rotating objects. That is a good question. No, it's not on the same thing as the keyboard shortcuts. I don't know. See, that would be over in the tool database. Tooling, machine tool database, cloud version, material management, tool database, name format, custom naming variables. But I don't know if there is a complete list of all of the variables. But there are several different variables that can be entered. Brooks says he got the tool name and document variables while searching for variables. But if you're talking about variables for math or variables for tool naming conventions, they're different things. So I would get into the section in the help file that refers to what exactly you want to work with. But I don't know that I have seen a complete list of the variables that are available in either subject. So, and that is something that is fairly new to, well, I won't say it, not all of it is new to 11.5, but there are more variables available in 11.5. So, Let's see. Let's see. Got that one taken care of. Okay, Mike Tadlock has a semi-popular question. I have an Aspire file. Can I send it for you to tell me what's wrong with it? I'm afraid I can't work on individual files for the same reason I can't do one-on-one. And that is simply because of time. I would shortchange you because I just simply do not have the time. I have 7 pieces on it, 5 carved perfectly with a profile toolpath, 2 of them carved twice. What you may want to do is look for duplicates. Or go down your, let me go back over here to Aspire. And I don't have any toolpaths created for anything here. Let's go back into the 2D view. When you have your list of toolpaths, well, let me create a real quick toolpath. We'll do that as a pocket. Use that bit. That's fine. Calculate. Okay, great. Then we'll come back over here, close my preview. We'll do this as a V-carve toolpath, and we'll do the 90 degree. That's fine. Okay, so I've got 2 different toolpaths here. And you see how I've got a check mark here. Check mark the toolpaths that you have created. And look to see, for instance, if I just want these 2 toolpaths, I just checked in my 3D view, in my preview, I just put a check mark in both of these. And that highlighted those toolpaths, the clearance path and the profile path. Okay. And that told me that these 2 are for this vector. It did not highlight the V-carve. So if this V-carve, for instance, is a duplicate, I can now come up here and right click on the title and I can delete this and it'll get rid of that one toolpath. Okay. Now, so what I'm suggesting is that you go down your toolpath list here and see if you have 2 toolpaths. Okay. Now Mike is saying, I have used the vector validator. There are no problems with the objects. 2 carve in one direction and then the opposite direction a little larger. Okay, is this a 3D or a 2D toolpath? What type of toolpath is it? That does matter as well. Okay. Oh, okay. I've deleted all of the toolpaths and only make a toolpath for that item and it still does it. Okay. Is this 3D or 2D? Because there is a difference there. Oh, man. So let me see. 2D flat object. Okay. When you get into creating for instance, this pocket toolpath I have here. All right. Are you going with offset or raster pocketing? Now, the raster, for instance, is only going to be a clearing because I'm using 2 different bits. But if, for instance, I remove that bit and I'm going to cut the entire thing, this entire vector with 1 bit, what it's going to do, if I do it offset, it'll come out here and it'll start in the middle and then just clear it all out. If I'm using raster, we have a profile pass. that can be done first or it can be done last. Not a pocket, a profile toolpath. Okay, even easier. Close. On a profile toolpath using that same one, are you cutting outside, inside, or on? Do you have an allowance offset? Do you have separate last pass checked? Do you have the allowance entered here? There are various things that can affect where the bit is going to cut. For instance, let me make a little bit bigger. Let me close this and make a bigger vector out here. Oops, 2D. First of all, let's get rid of all this here. So I'll delete that and come out here and do this. All right, now I want to carve that profile. All right, so I want to cut the profile toolpath. Now you're saying it's cutting this twice with, but it's cutting it a little bit larger. Wow, that doesn't make any sense. Are you sure no, that still doesn't make any sense. If you're cutting to the outside, it does. It sounds like we've got people here saying, would a duplicate vector make toolpaths? Perhaps if they're grouped, so clicking selects both. That's what I'm thinking, and Bob jumping in as well. If you have, okay, let me close this here. And I'm going to do something you shouldn't do. I'm going to Control C for copy, then Control V for paste. So I have two vectors. Now I select them both. If I come up here and I create, let's go outside, no offsets or anything like that, and calculate. Did you get, I don't know if you've got that error or not, ignoring duplicate vectors. Have you looked to see if there's a duplicate vector? Let me close this. Select, right click, selection, select all duplicate vectors. Then delete one of them. Only one tool path cuts it one direction and then cuts the opposite direction. You're sure that's a closed vector? Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Okay. Let's see here. Node editing. I'm going to cut the vector right here. Okay. Then I'll come out of node editing. Now, it looks like a closed vector. If I do a profile tool path to the outside, calculate, okay, because I have, well, it's not going to do it. It's not going to do it because that's a cut vector. There's only one. Well, it doesn't have to be now. It doesn't have to be only one. Well, yes, it would have to be only one start node. I don't know. This is mystifying, Mike. I've not run into this. I have not run into this. Now, what I have run into is, and I did this wrong. So let me close this and uncheck this. Go back into node editing so that I have two separate vectors. and select both outside. Continue. You got no error messages or anything. Well, see, Mike, I don't have an answer. I've never run across this. I have never run across this, with the exception of if I have two open vectors that looks like a joined vector. But if you are, let me uncheck this. And it's not a question of paying for my time or anything like that. If you've selected them, gone into node editing, well, see, I only have one start point here. So, you know what I mean? Okay, you're saying it's making two passes, then two passes in the opposite direction. That's what I'm getting at. If you look at, come out of node editing, if I select like so, I've only got one start point. But if you look up here at the arrows, I've got two different, that's two start points stacked one on top of the other. I've got two different directions being indicated. You see what I'm getting at? So it looks like one closed vector, but it's not, because again, I have this arrow indicating the cut direction is going to be this way, and this is going to be cut directions for that way. So it's not making sense. Wade says if the arrows on the toolpaths are in two different directions, you have an open vector, I would say, and I agree. Okay, he says, yes, I looked for that, but there is not but one arrow. Wow. I don't know. Mike, it's time to get into make a send an email to Vectric support and include a couple of pictures, because I've not run into that, so I don't have an answer for you. Send a couple of pictures and the file to Vectric support and see what they say. You know, that's a mystery to me. I don't know. I really don't know. And see, Sargon Tavur, Vectric forum users can look at your file. Yes, there are people over there who will look at your file, and they are a very, very underused resource. If you're not a member, if you're using Vectric software and you're not a member over at the Vectric support forum, you're doing yourself a disservice. You should be a member. But I would post it, post a, uh, that is not difficult to do. That is not difficult to do. Believe me. Because I'll give you an example here. Let me make a change here. I'll delete these. I'll go over here to the toolpath list and I'll delete all, close this, and I'll show you something. Go into job setup and we'll make this a double-sided job. Okay. And I'm working on my top. Had a longtime subscriber by the name of Ronald Cool. Don't know, I haven't seen you out in the chat, but so I don't know if you're here or not. But he ran across this one. And this is a kind of a simplified version of what he was dealing with. So let me go ahead and we'll delete this span here, and I'll move this down to the edge of my material, and then move this down to the edge of my material. And So we're set. I have an open vector cutting along the edges here. Okay. So what he did was he created the vector, then right click, copy to other side. Okay. Then what he did was he set up a toolpath to cut halfway on this side. Whoops, not to, and then cut halfway on this side. Okay. Now here's the problem that he ran into. And I'm fixing to run long here, but let's go ahead and do a profile toolpath to he was doing inside left, and we'll go with 0.5. I don't remember what the thickness was. We will calculate it, then preview it, close, flip over to the other side, and do the exact same thing. Calculate it, preview it. Oops, let's preview all sides. Okay. And if you look, they don't match up. They don't align. Okay. It turns out what's going on is if you look at the vectors, go back to a straight Z view. If you look at the vectors, and we'll click on Node Edit, here's my starting point. Okay. My start point is over here. And in this toolpath, I told it to cut inside to the left of that vector, so that when that bit comes in, it's going to cut to the left side of the start point. Okay. Let me close this. If I flip over to the bottom, select it, go into node editing, it's over here. The toolpath is going to go to the left of that start point. So come out of node editing. If I select that toolpath, put a check mark in it, you see where the bit's going to cut to the outside of the vector. It's cutting to the left of the start point. It's cutting to the, or excuse me, to the to the outside of the vector. But if I switch over to the top, it's cutting to the inside. So what you have to do if you're, for instance, doing the it's making sure that the vector start points are in the same place. So to fix that, he had to go into his bottom one, then come over here in node editing and make that the start point. Come out of node editing, then recalculate the toolpath. Then it would work fine. Preview all sides. Then it worked. So I don't know if you have something like that going on or not. Oh, wow. Thank you very much for the super chat. I know I was absolutely no help, but thank you very much. I mean, you're more than kind. Um, Just for giggles, you have nothing to lose except the time it takes you to do it. Select all those vectors and see if you can join it. See if you can join the, it makes no sense why it would do that, you know? But thank you again very much for the super chat. Wow, that is a stumper though. And when you get a solution, please share the wealth. Let us know. You have tried to join them. Wow, that doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't make any sense at all. Wow. Okay, JC, one last comment here, not relevant to current discussion. Very little of what I say is, but I drilled and added steel dowel location pins to my spoil board this week. What a great way to accurately locate X and Y repeatedly. Thanks for the tip. I'm telling you, you're very welcome, JC. I'm telling you, I absolutely love that. And that is my go-to now. It is, I'm just absolutely 100% going to be the way I use this machine. I'll put it to you this way. I just finished, like I said this morning, I finished surfacing the real pirate video in leopard wood, and I didn't use the three-way touch plate to set X or Y at one single time. I set it once when I first set up that fixture in the corner with the holes and steel dowels. I used the touch plate to set my X and Y 0 one time, and I've not touched it since. And all I have to do is go into um, my offset screen, click on apply G59 offset, then go to work XY0, and boom, it's done. I haven't, I used the touch plate to set excuse me, boy, Z0, but that's it. So, okay. Yeah. You're getting a lot of help over here, Mike. And I would, I would say, you know what? This is bringing up a good point. You're talking about, it's not square. It looks like a little boot. Okay. Did you draw this, or was this like a DXF file, an SVG file, something like that? I mean, yeah, I still would like to know the reason it does it. Me too. Hmm. Hmm. Wow. See, that's bugging me. That's really bugging me. Suicidal at all times, still one of the best YouTube names out there. Although I have to tell you, I found one, depending upon my mood, I found another YouTube username that rivals yours as one of the best of all times. So I don't know. You have to be a Metallica fan to get this, but the guy calls himself the pastor of Muppets. I don't know. Uh, See, sometimes Windows does stuff that buggers up things and it's unfixable, but redoing it either finds the issues or fixes. Yeah, that's true. I did redraw it in another file and it cuts perfectly. Okay. 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 Yeah. Pastor of Muppets. I saw that and I don't laugh out loud at things like that very much. I literally went, oh man, just, yeah, that's perfect. way narrow casting now. Okay. Thank you very much. Mike, if you redrew it in another file and it cuts perfectly, hopefully that fixed the issue. But yes, I'm with you. I want to know why it did it. It's kind of sort of like um, when I lose something, I don't really care if I ever get it back. I just want to know where the heck it went because that's a good hiding spot, you know. But do kind of keep us informed. I would definitely go over to the Vectric support forum. If you're not already a member, join. Post the file or some photos over there. And if they can't help you, nobody can. Because I mean, some of these guys are wizards, and you'll recognize a lot of names over there. People who really know their stuff, and again, can run circles around me. But yeah, definitely. Okay, y'all. Next week is the long, way too long awaited pirate video. Again, I surfaced it earlier today. Gonna start sanding and finishing this afternoon after we're finished here. I will get a link to the mock support website. Um, I'll go ahead and link the Vectric support forum uh, as well. And I'll find a link to some Guitar Honey and I'll put it in there also. Channel members, uh, 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern tomorrow. I've got a little something. Actually, Brooks sent a little something, and I've got a little something as well for us to talk about. And that'll be again 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. If you would like to become a channel member or just want some information on it, go ahead and click that join button down there next to the subscribe button, and a little panel will pop up. A video will play that'll tell you all about channel membership on my channel. And I think that's it. Next week, the pirate. Oh, no, a little programming note. Next week's pirate video will be the last edited video for this year. I will be putting the channel on hiatus as far as edited videos are concerned, because now's the time I got to start getting ready for Christmas. And so my efforts will be put towards making Christmas gifts. My grandkids and kids don't follow my channel, but they are aware enough to occasionally come over here and look to see if they can get some sort of an insight as to what they're getting for Christmas. But dad/grandpa is too smart for that, so he don't put nothing out until after the new year. I will continue to do Sunday live streams, and I will continue to do the Monday members only live streams. That will not change. But after next Sunday, there won't be another video until after the new year. So I have a big old long list of stuff to work through. And believe me when I say I'm going to need until December 24th to sort all that out. I have 5 kids, 7 grandkids, a wife, and various in-laws, outlaws, cousins, nieces, nephews, you name it. So next week is the last edited video for this year. But we will be here every Sunday. Every Sunday or every Sunday, if you can speak. So until then, thank you very much, Mike, for the super chat. I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much again to all my channel members. I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Thank you very much again to Steve Nealon over at Harneo Media. Remember, if you're thinking about a website, a web store, check him out. You cannot go wrong. And I'll see you next week. So until then, Y'all take care. Go out in the shop, make some chips. You got a little bit of time left. Get out of here, will you? Go on, go on. Bye-bye, y'all.